Hey, how's it going, everybody? JP here. I'm back with another Leetcode solution, this time to question 1710 maximum units on a truck. Before I get started, if you guys want to support the channel, you guys can sub to the channel as well. Give a like to this video. Yeah, that's about all I gotta say. So let's get started with the question. All right, so in this question, we are given two things. We're given box types, which is a 2D array, as well as truck size, which is an integer. So box types is a 2D array, and the inner arrays contain two elements. The first element being the number of boxes that we have of that type, and then the second element being the number of units that can fit in that box type. So in example number one, and I'll just go through the box types for now, and then I'll actually walk through example number one later on. But the box types here, so 1, 3, what does this represent? It means that for this type of box, so I'm just going to call it type 0, right? Because it's the 0th index. So type 0, this type of box, we have one box of type 0. And then each of these boxes can hold 3 units. So that's what it means, okay? So you can repeat that whole process with these, all the inner lists. So if you go to like 2, 2 here, right? So what does 2, 2 represent? Well, 2, 2 represents this. 2, 2 represents that we have, I'll call this type 1 because it's in the first index. So type 1, this type of box, we have 2 of these, and each of these boxes can hold 2 units. Okay, so that's basically what it means. And so that's what box types means. So that's what each of the inner list represents. For truck size, it's pretty self-explanatory. It's how many boxes we can fit into the truck. Okay, so the goal here is to return the maximum amount of units given the truck size. So now let's move on to the first example. Okay, so in the first example, we are given this input, right? So 1, 3, 2, 2, 3, 1, and the truck size is 4, and the output is 8. So in the explanation, it's pretty straightforward, right? So for truck size 4, the first box that we load is the one that can hold 3 units. So this one right here. Oops. This one right here. Right? So we load one box, or I'll put this in a different color. Right? We put one box, right, that can hold 3 units. Next, we load 2 boxes of type 1, so this one here, right? So we load 2 boxes of type 1, and each of these boxes can hold 2 units. Now at this point, you can see that our truck size has decreased to 1, meaning that we can only fit 1 box. Okay, so now we only have 1 box left, and the only box that we can load is the last type, right? So I guess we can call it type 2, right? So I'm talking about this one here. This box, we can only fit 1, and each of these boxes can hold only 1 unit. Okay, so here, this is type 1, right? So type 1, or let's call this type 0, type 1, and then this is type 2, right? So we can see here, if we were to add up all of this, right, that's going to be 8, right? So we have 3, then here we have 4, so that's 7, plus 1, right? So that equals 8. And that's how it works. So one thing that I want to mention before I get started on the solution is that each of these boxes only take up 1 unit of space in the truck, regardless of how many units they can hold. So what I mean here is that this box here, 1, 3, this box will only take up 1 unit of space, and this box here, so type 1, can hold 2 units, but they both occupy 1 unit of space in the truck. So just because a box can hold more units, it doesn't necessarily mean that it takes up more space in the truck. So that's one thing to keep in mind. So yeah, so that's the first example. Now let's move on to a solution. All right, so in example number one, the solution was pretty straightforward. We just kept on loading the boxes, based on the index, right? So we would just load up this box, right, first, and then we load up all these boxes. And then finally, when we get to this box, we only had one space left. So we just put one type or one box of this type, right? Pretty easy, right? Pretty self-explanatory. Now, there's one thing that we didn't really mention, and it was that this example had the boxes already sorted based on the number of units that the box can hold. So if you can see where I'm trying to get at here, it's pretty much that we need to keep loading the truck with the boxes that carry the most amount of units, right? So for example, let's say we had something like this. Let's say this box here, instead of holding 1 unit, it can hold 5 units, right? So if we were to take the solution for example number 1 and apply it here, it wouldn't work, right? Because then we would first load this box here, and then we would load all these boxes, and then at this point we only have one space left. And in this case, we would just load one of the boxes that can hold 5 units. But it'd be smarter if we were to reorganize or sort this list such that this is our first element. So here, right, instead, we can load 3 of the boxes that can hold 5 units. Then we can load one box, or I guess the only box that can hold 3 units. And then at this point we have one open space left. So here we can load one box that can carry 2 units. And as a result, well, this will be 15, 3, and 2. So that's going to be 20 units, right? That would be 20 units, right? So it's best here to load the truck with the box that can hold the most amount of units, and we pretty much load it up until we run out. And then once we run out of that type of box, then we move on to the next biggest box, right? The next, I guess, box that can hold the most amount of units, all right? So that's basically the solution. And now let's code it up. All right, so the first thing we're going to do here is we are going to create a variable that keeps track of all of the units in our truck. So I'm going to call this max units. And then remember how I mentioned earlier that we want to sort the list based on the amount of units that a box can hold. So in Python, we can use the built-in sort function. So I'm going to say box types dot sort. And then here I'm going to say key is equal, so we're going to use a lambda function. And I'll explain what it means in a second. Let me just write it out. Okay, so what this means here is that we're going to sort box types, and we're going to sort it based on the first index of the inner list, right? Because remember that our first index in our inner list is the number of units per box. So we're going to sort it based on that. And here I say reverse is true because we want to make the box that holds the most amount to be in front, to be the first one. And then after that, it's going to be in descending order. That's what it means. Okay, so now that we have it sorted, the only thing we have to do now is just write a for loop and just keep loading our truck until we reach, the last box. So here I'm gonna say for box in box types. So remember, box types now is sorted. What we want to do is we want to check if the number of boxes for that box type is smaller or equal to our truck size, right? Because if it's smaller or equal to our truck size, then that means we can just load all the boxes of that type. So we could say if you load up all the boxes of that type, then we could say max unit or max units is now equal to our box, how many boxes we have, times the number of units for that box type, right? So the number of boxes we have, and then how many units are in that box. Then what you want to do is you want to decrement the truck size by the number of boxes that we just put into our truck. Now, if the number of boxes exceed, right, if it's larger than our truck size, that means whatever we have left, we just fill it up. We fill up the truck with that many boxes of that type. So here we can just return, right? We can just return our max units because at this point we're done, right? Plus now the truck size, the remaining truck size times the box, right? The last type of box that we're going to add to our truck. Now there's also another case where we can fit all the boxes, and then in this case we could just return all, the max number of units. So let's run the code. And you can actually see that we got the test case. We got a test case, right? The first example, we got it. Let's submit it. And you can see I already tested out the code earlier. And there we go. So yeah, we got the answer. And don't worry about the runtime and memory usage on Leetcode. One thing I will note though is I will say that the runtime, the overall runtime for this algorithm is big O of n log n. Now, why is it n log n? It's n log n because the sort function for in Python takes this amount of time, and obviously this for loop is gonna be big O of n, but since n log n is greater than n, this is our worst case scenario, hence it's our runtime. Now, in terms of space, excuse me, space complexity is big O of n. Why is it big O of n? Because again, this built-in sort function in Python takes up big O of n. But yeah, that's basically the solution to this question. If you guys learned anything or you guys want to support the channel, you guys can always sub to the channel as well as like the video. And yeah, that's about it. I'll see you guys in the next one. Later.